Hello, everybody. This is Barbara Drazga, and you are here today with Dylan Frost and Dan Metters, the free wholesale workshop dudes. Came on to share some of their secrets on solving the two biggest problems that I think a lot of us as Amazon sellers have, and that is not enough time and not enough money. If you could boil it down to two major things that keep us from taking action and moving forward in our business, as we say, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough money. So we're going to talk about how we all overcame those potential obstacles in our own way, in our own businesses, since we've started on Amazon. Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, just checking in, because I didn't really tell you guys what we were gonna talk about. So I'm throwing you in the deep end, but I know you know what you're doing, so we're just gonna move on. So building capital, delegating, and systematizing. And now we're gonna turn off the slides because there are no slides. It's just going to be us talking aside from that slide. So basically, hey Dan, you're really dark on the screen. Is there any way to, if you turn up the light on your screen, if you just turn up the brightness of your screen, because you're in a lot of shadow there, man. Okay.
Well,
that's all right. You'll figure it out while we're talking. So first, I want to start with how you guys got started. What is your story? Everybody's got a cool story of how they, lost everything. That was my story. The real estate crash. I was a real estate investor, and everything went right. And started over again. And first I started going to auctions and buying stuff. My first buy was a meat slicer, a German meat slicer. The brand was Merkel. I'll never forget it. And sold it out of the back of my little Hyundai. Right, at a gas station where I met the guy so we could plug it in. I'm not kidding you. And I made like $100 on the darn thing. I'm like, ooh, this is interesting. And that's what got me into physical products. I don't know, about 8 years ago now, a while ago. And that led into selling on Amazon. I went to some auctions. I started seeing things that were regularly selling for really high prices. And I thought, I wonder if I can source those wholesale. And gee, Amazon has a lot of people. Maybe I can sell that stuff on Amazon too. And I basically stumbled into it. It was a complete accident because the real estate crash, right? So it was a good thing. I can say that now, 10 years later. It was a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's got a fun story, and I want to hear your guys' real story, like the nothing to something.
Well, I can tell you about the real estate crash in 08. I didn't feel it. It didn't matter to me. I was in high school in 08.
Okay.
So,
all right, guys, if you're sensitive, close your ears, because I'm going to say something nasty to this young man. Shut up.
Right, but in the part of Eastern Kentucky where Dan and I are from, the real estate crash in 08, it actually didn't affect our area at all. There was no noticeable effect in the economy because it was already so depressed and poor. It couldn't get any worse. Real estate was already worthless in Eastern Kentucky, so they saw just no issues. Some people, the very few people that have 401ks or anything like that, they saw some amount of effect from it, but it definitely didn't affect Eastern Kentucky nearly as much. But yeah, I was in high school in 08, and Dan wasn't that far removed from it either.
For those of you who are just listening to this, I just did a really big eye roll. Okay. Just saying.
But yeah.
What was you have a story, right?
Sure,
so
yeah.
What was your story?
I'll let Dan I'll kick it over to him. He started it.
Yeah.
Dan's older.
A little bit, yeah. We got started with Amazon in 2011, and it was honestly just kind of like a side hobby, and that was the goal at the time. One of our buddies, and how we got started is one of our buddies who worked for the same company we did came into the office, and he had turned in his resignation. And like Dylan said, we're in a pretty depressed area, and this guy was making well over six figures. So it was it was a really odd situation. And I went and I was talking to him, and I was like, Andrew, man, are you moving or something? What's going on? And he said this was his exact quote. He was like, no, seriously, man, I just make more money sitting at home in my underwear, selling stuff on Amazon. And I was like, what? And at that point, I didn't realize that Amazon was even a place that I could sell stuff. I thought it was, relatively like a bookstore that carried other stuff.
Yep.
And then I started looking in, I went back to my office and I looked at it and I was like, wow, that seems pretty cool. And I went and bothered him some more, and they took us out and we started doing retail arbitrage, and he explained kind of the whole process. And that was the day I got started. Like we went out, we bought some Disney cars and sent them in, had immediate success. And that was enough, that was enough proof right there to really like dive in a little bit more. So every night, every weekend, it was shopping or packing and shipping. Like that was our, that was what we were doing. And then in late 2011, like just a few days before Christmas, I got terminated from my job. And I remember, actually, that was like probably the turning point in my life. I remember it pretty vividly. Like I was out at a restaurant. It was our, the boss's style was to take you out to lunch. And we were at lunch. I got fired
over sushi.
Over Mexican food, actually. But we went out to lunch. He told me that it was a basic termination. Like he was moving me to a really awful position. And I was like, I can't do that. And so he was like, well, I mean, I have to let you go then. So when I went back, and at that point I had a little 250 square foot office. And I remember like sitting there trying to think about what I was going to tell my wife. Like we had a 1-year-old daughter. And it was kind of funny because I had a great job, but I was always terrified of growing up with debt because my mom, she just got murdered. Like she got murdered with debt, credit card debt when I was growing up. So I was afraid of debt.
Okay.
And, so like everything, even though I had a great job, like I didn't have a substantial amount of money in the bank because I'd bought everything in cash. Like I'd bought a house. I had paid off my wife's student loans. I had bought a car for both of us. I just replaced our HVAC and just replaced our roof too, which was really, it's just been an absolute beating. And whenever I got terminated, I had $4,200 in my bank account. And I was just terrified. And I went back and I sat in the office and I started crying at first because I was just, it was super upsetting. And then I decided I was going to tell my wife I quit. And my logic behind this was I wanted to seem confident, like I had a plan so I wouldn't scare her. And I was just mortified. I was honestly just mortified that I got fired. So when I went there, I told her, and she started just crying immediately. And she was like, no, seriously, go and get your job back, like right now. And I was like, no, it's really good. Like, we're fine. I didn't believe that, for the record. Like, I actually just didn't believe it. But I was determined to make it work. Over the next couple of years, we did retail arbitrage, and we did about $1 million in sales per year, within that range. But the problem was it was one of those situations where I was replacing a high income for one. And to do that, like I had to work, Barbara, you've worked retail arbitrage, you want to do a substantial amount of sales. It's certainly possible, but it's also a substantial amount of work.
And there's only so much room in the minivan that's pulling a 4x6 trailer, 4x8 trailer, whatever my trailer is. There's only so much you can put in that in one trip, and then you got to cycle back around. I do want to hear the rest of your story, but can I ask one question before you move on? The gentleman who introduced you to Amazon, what was his name again?
Andrew, our buddy Andrew.
So do you think it would have taken you longer to even know about Amazon, but longer to get up to speed had you not had him coaching you, showing you?
For sure. I mean, whenever I heard from him that you could sell on Amazon, that was really cool. And then
you believed him. You weren't like,
hey, he was great. He was one of my buddies. But whenever I went to Amazon, like I didn't know what a detail page was. I didn't know what a sales rank was. I didn't know what anything was. And I had him there to kind of coach me along and just, tell me what was good and what was bad. And I learned.
I had a gentleman at an auction who was buying pallets of books. The books were from universities. And I was buying like home decor and furniture and whatever, but he would always get the pallets for like nothing. I mean, $20 for a pallet of university books. And one day he said, Barbara, I asked him why he was buying books, and he said, he showed me his phone, and it was the Amazon app. And the numbers were unreal. And he said, Barbara, I just paid off my house. I just paid off my house by selling on Amazon. And that was the first little inkling that I was introduced that Amazon was something we could sell on.
Sure.
Thanks for letting me in.
Situation, really. So, it was just, we were doing great as far as with retail arbitrage financially, but the workload was pretty overbearing. I mean, we don't have there's not a lot of retail presence where we live. Like our town's about 9,000 people, 7,000 people, something like that. And, to go to Target, it's an hour and a half away, to give you an example. So like we were literally driving all over the country, the eastern side of the country to source that many products. So it was just crazy. Like I was working probably 70 hours a week at the time, 60 and 70 hours a week. And it was the breaking point was Thanksgiving. And we had went out. It was like, Black Friday's it's just crazy. Like it's where everybody wants to be. But it was the second time in a row that I left my daughter, and I was just like, whenever we start talking about owning our own business, because at this point, I think like we'd made enough money that I was like, I considered myself a business owner, and this is what made me really start to question it. And it was, whenever you start thinking of the term business owner, do you think of somebody that is completely strapped to, relatively strapped to what they do? No, like it's freedom, right? And it's like, here I am, I walk around and talk and call myself a business owner, but I'm just like everybody else. I'm a slave to the machine.
A glorified employee that you just happen to be the guy who runs it.
Exactly. And so whenever I thought of it from that perspective, it made me really, really want to change, because I knew that, to grow the business, that just meant more time. Like if in my current trajectory, like the only way I can really grow is commit more time or hire and train people. But like whenever you're doing retail arbitrage, there's, I believe that people can be hired and trained. I think the hiring and training that goes into training somebody for retail arbitrage is significantly more difficult than something like wholesale. And the logic behind it is there's just so many decisions, right? Like every single product that you're out, let's say you're physically in a store and you scan a product. Whenever you scan it, that's the snapshot decision you're making your decision off of. Whereas with wholesale, there's so much more information, right? Like I can look and I can see on Keepa how long a product's been selling. Like I have better information to make a decision. And whenever you plug those criteria in, it makes it pretty streamlined in choosing a good product versus a bad product.
Plus, people inherently are unpredictable. Stuff happens. The car breaks down. Child gets sick. They can't. So you've got this built-in unpredictability if you're building most of your business based on relying on other people to do a certain job. It's good to rely on other people, but the more that you could replace people with systems and software and processes, I think secures you a little bit more. Do you agree with that?
And I have a point for sure, and it's a key difference between retail arbitrage and wholesale when it comes to scaling and growing, is that your first hire in a retail arbitrage business has to be a domestic employee. So we know that at a minimum you have to pay them, what is it, $7.15? That's a minimum, but you probably, for the jobs that you would have them do, whether it's shopping or prepping, it's probably more like a $9, $10+ an hour job. Your first hire in a wholesale business is a virtual assistant for $3 an hour or less. Yep. So it's a very key difference on cost for your first employee when you get to that point as well.
Yeah, when you also start considering, like, when you all, and these were all thoughts we had, like this was all, we were talking about how do we grow the business without spending more time. And we looked at that, and it was whenever you start looking at, whenever you have to pay somebody for gas and time and overtime and to drive around and shop, because I can't pay somebody to go to all my stores in my area. I can do that in 30 minutes. I would have to literally pay them to drive to neighboring cities and shop. And when you start getting into that, not only is there additional liabilities, there's so much cost because, you're paying for the drive there. So let's say I'm paying for them to go to Target. Now I'm paying an hour and a half salary to drive there. I'm paying whatever time they're in the store. I'm paying, checkout, travel back. Like it's just, there's so much cost that's just inherently built in for us. So it wasn't scalable. And then we looked at other models. Like we looked at, the first one was a retail store, and that one was a terrible idea in our location. Because it's, in our small economy, we were trying to be a specialized retail store. And whenever you do that, it's just, there's not physically enough foot traffic that comes in. So we ended up, that didn't work out very well. We sold our retail store. We started a website, a retail website that sold My Little Pony collectibles. And you can probably predict how successful it was, but it was, actually it was probably more successful than you imagine, but it still wasn't sustainable and growable to the point that we would have needed to really make a dent. So we ended up selling that website, and then we tried private label, and it was really cool. Like the first product that we launched actually took off and did fairly well. And it was like, holy crap, like this is it. Like we found it, And then we launched a second product and it was an absolute dud. And and the problem was I couldn't tell you why. Like I couldn't tell you what the difference was in our approach, realistically. And that was the concerning part is, if I look at these two things identically and I did them relatively identically and one didn't work out and I couldn't tell you why, like that's concerning to me because, in private label, whenever you launch a product, like go through that process of launching a product, it's really expensive and you need one of two things. You either need a big war chest where you're capable of making mistakes, or you need to be pinpoint precise, and we didn't have that option.
And there are a lot of moving parts with private label. And I'm actually kind of glad you brought up private label because right now what's happening in February 2020, sorry, I'm still in January. So I am wholesale, bundles, and I just launched 2 private label brands in that order. So let's talk coronavirus. So I was able to get a container out of China like a few days before the whole thing blew up, but I can get nothing produced now. I have 2 SKUs. I approved the samples they sent me, but they're not going to be produced for who knows when. The entire supply chain is just choked off now. So thank God I have my base of wholesale income so that it doesn't matter as much, that I'm not relying on the private label income. I'm relying on my wholesale sourcing.
And that's typically there. One of the big differences right there is whenever you're private, whenever you tend to be private label, you're relatively all in on a short number of SKUs. Like
3 SKUs.
Three
yeah.
products.
Yep.
And that's probably I don't know what your products are, but I'm guessing that those 2 or 3 SKUs probably represent a decent amount of money. Yep. Like as far as investment.
It's 3 variations of 1 SKU, and it's in the home decor market.
Yeah. So the money that it takes to launch that is typically substantial.
So I'm very transparent. So this first container that left was 17 grand.
Okay.
And that's not launch cost. That's door to door. And I'm using a third-party logistics company to take everything in. But that's no launch cost, no other cost, just the cost of manufacturing and getting it to my 3PL in Texas.
Sure. Exactly.
SKU. That was 1 SKU.
Right. And that was our situation is we went, we did well with our first product and it performed well. And then our second product just was ultimately a dud. And it was such a substantial investment that it terrified us. And then there was another problem that happened. And our first product, eventually competition caught up to it and they were better marketers than we were. Yep. Like they knew, they knew how to run sponsored ads. They knew how to optimize a listing. They knew all those things that we didn't know. And our product just got slaughtered. Yep. So here we are starting from relative day one again. It's like, well, we know how to do RA. That's about it. And our next course of action was to look at wholesale. And it was, because it's a similar concept. The product comes to you, which is scalable, much like we had envisioned with private label, like the scalability of it. So that part was great. But with us, the way we were looking at it is like, well, if we can get this to work, we don't have to market for these products. Like realistically, and we didn't have the skills to do it at the time. Like I didn't have the skills to make a product sell better. Really, I just I knew the processes and technical side of Amazon to sell a product, but I didn't know how to really improve listings or the science behind that. So when we got started with wholesale, that was our logic. This is scalable, similarly to private label, but it's there's less reliance on myself being a good marketer to not flop, right? Because I'm starting.
Again, it comes down to us being humans are more flawed than the numbers.
Sure.
What I love about wholesale the most is that it is number based. It's not, gee, I wonder if this will fly and let me take a chance. And no, you look at the numbers and you make a decision based on the numbers. And there's a certain amount of feeling of security in that for me.
Exactly. And that is, it really is. It's everything that you look at in wholesale, you can mathematically determine if it's good or bad. Now, there's variables that change over time, but for the most part, it is pretty black and white. Like, you can make a pretty easy decision on whether you should to buy a product or not. So whenever we got started, it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. And it was, we got started traditionally. We contacted distributors And we got our price lists. And at that time, like this was around 2015, I guess, like there were none of the like tactical arbitrage machines and stuff like that you could put a price list through. So it was literally manually looking each item up. And I remember going through the first one, and it was like 7,000 lines. And I found one product that I could make $1.41 on. And I was like, oh my God. Like, I literally spent 3 days looking every single item up, and nothing, literally nothing. And then it was the next catalog and the next catalog. And I eventually found a product. We bought it. And it was like, okay, so how do we scale this? We decided we would go to ASD. Well, that sounds fantastic for somebody like Barbara, who is an extrovert. Particularly at the time, like this was really, it was really awkward because, like, I was terrible at talking to people at the time, so it was a miserable experience. We did, at the show, I felt like we were forced to make more on-point decisions rather than having time to research products, and I got pretty overwhelmed. That was my first feeling at that first ASD I went to was overwhelmed because we spent several thousands of dollars to get there, and then I wasn't finding anything. Like every time I would scan something, it was the same kind of stuff that I'd been reviewing off the catalogs, and it was like, gosh almighty. And I remember we went to this one booth and I scanned an item, and it was finally one where it looked like it would make money, and it was like, we have to buy it. You just have to pay for our trip, if nothing else. And we ended up buying that product. And by the time it landed at the door, we were losing money, like 40%. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, how does this happen? How does this happen? Like, how does anybody make money with this model? And ultimately pretty dejected. And then I remember the kind of the light bulb moment happened just shortly after that. And it's always funny how whenever you look back, it's like, ultimately, it was just, the defeat at ASD was absolutely crushing. And then it's like, it's just one of those things that puts you right back in the game as an entrepreneur, and it's like, oh, this can work again. And
I think everything that we've done this far, talking to you guys watching this, everything you've done this far in your business that you think was a failure was just a lesson to get you to the next step.
Sure. And I think that's how you have to approach it if you want to be a real entrepreneur and a real business owner. Is nothing ever works the way, I've seen that funny picture where it's like everybody always sees the straight line to success, and it really is just a big jaggedy thing, and it sometimes it's miserable. And that was one of those times. Like, I was literally just thinking the only way that I'm smart enough to make money is literally drive around the country in a van and pick up crap. Like that was my thought, and it was just unbelievable. And then I remember there was a product sitting on my desk, and I was like, why can't I just buy this? Like, I just want that one. And that was it. It was like, I can call we can call the manufacturer. So I did that. And I was like, can you just tell me which distributor carries that? So my plan from there was like, I would just call every brand that I wanted to carry, and I was going to ask them which distributor carried it, and it would make my search easier. And they were like, well, we could just sell directly to you.
Right.
And I was like,
yeah, I was going to say.
what? Like you'll do that, and then it comes the dread of how much is your minimum order, and it was $250. Like, and I remember, so I actually placed an order on the call, and it was like one of those situations where when I hung up the phone, like you see the dips and the valleys. That was the biggest valley I had had in months. Like, I hung up the phone and I was like, oh my gosh, if it is this easy, I'm going to be a millionaire in a week. Like, if they'll just sell me the products every time I call them, it's easy. Game
Okay,
over.
let's put a pin in this for 30 seconds, and I want to ask everybody in here, if you're in the chat and you're taking notes, answer me this question. How many of you thought that you would have to spend, $5,000 on your first wholesale order? Put yes in the chat if you thought it was a lot more expensive than what Dan's talking about. Okay, so I'll let you guys get in the chat as Dan continues.
So whenever I'm going to go ahead and give a spoiler alert. It wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be.
Go for it.
And so the problem became whenever we would call people from there. The problem kind of became like, why we would call and just be like, hey, we'd love to set up an account and carry your products on Amazon, and they'd be like, we're not really interested in any other Amazon sellers. And it was like, why are they turning down money? That was my first thought. And bear in mind, like you always go through that. I feel like you go through these crazy progressions where it takes, especially me, because I'm a bit slower than your average guy. So it takes me a bit of time to like piece together why that why don't they want my money? Like all businesses should want money. And, so I would call and they would tell me like, no, we're not looking for anybody right now. Thanks, but no thanks. And it was just time and time again. And it was running into that same kind of wall, right? And there was this one particular product that I called, and it was a product that I'd been using. Like it was during like whenever I was trying to get back in shape, and I started with a supplement, and I loved this supplement, and I called. Like I'd sent the email, and it was like, hey, I'm Dan. I would love to carry your stuff on Amazon, like kind of thing. And they replied with, no thanks. We have we have enough Amazon sellers or whatever. And I remember I was like, it's crazy because like I knew that the product I knew this product was better than their competitor, and I could literally look and see that the competitive product was outselling it, and the listing was significantly better. And that was the one thing I noticed, was that listing was significantly better. And it's like, well, so I called the company and I was like, guys, I sent you an email about carrying your product on Amazon. And you replied and said that you guys weren't currently looking for anybody. And this was like, I remember it was so rattling at the time. And the guy was like, yeah, and I meant it. I was like,
ouch.
1 second to talk. I would just love to talk to you about, how you guys are doing on Amazon. And he was like, yeah, I'll talk to you, man. And he said, at the time there were 2 sellers on this product, and they were E-Tails and River Colony Trading.
Big sellers.
For those of you who don't know, those are massive sellers.
$100 million a year companies. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and he was like, before you get into this, man, I just want to, I work with I've worked with lots of Amazon sellers over the years, and I'm working with 2 of the biggest ones. I have no idea what you could possibly offer me. And that's why I get emails all the time. And that's what I just turn people down, because I'm already covered. These guys, and he felt safe. And that's ultimately what all brands feel, right? Is like, he just felt safe. He was used to dealing with them. He knew how it worked. And I was like, no, I definitely understand that. Those guys, those companies are incredible. Just one minute. I want to show you something really cool about your product. And he's like, okay. And I was like, are you in front of a computer? And yep. And I was like, type in your product and let's go look at it. And then I want you to bring up another tab, do the same thing, and type in this product. I was like, I don't know if you guys, he's like, of course I know it. It's one of our, it's one of our biggest competitors. So he goes to the pages, and I was like, shockingly enough, that product just absolutely destroys you guys on Amazon. Like outselling you 2 to 1 right now. And he was like, he was like, what? And he gets down and he starts looking, and that listing was so much better than his. And I was like, man, I'll be honest, like I used your product, and that's the only reason I called you. Like I'd send an email. Everybody else I just send an email to. And I was like, but I know your product's is the best in the category. I've researched it, I've used it, and I actually know it. And right now you got probably the 2 of the biggest sellers on Amazon carrying your product. So there's not much I can do there's not much that I can do for you that they can't. But here's the thing: they haven't. They've not done anything. And while you're just a client to them, you're just a client 974. Like to me, you're the biggest client. You're my only client. And I promise you that'll never happen again. I'll make sure that all your product listings are up to date and your product's featured the way that you want to see it. And he was like, man, you know what? I'd love to work with you. And that was it. Like that was the big change right there. And it was like, all right. And that's what really opened the door for us, is understanding that, it's not just money. There are more important ways to be able to get people to work with you. And that's helping them on something they can't do. Like, with money, that guy, if he hung up the phone, he knew that his phone was going to ring 20 minutes, in 20 or 30 minutes with somebody else wanting to buy his product. So he can always turn down money because it's always going to be there. But the one thing he couldn't turn down was the level of care that I was willing to give him. And that was the thing that we could offer that kind of set us apart.
I think one of the mistakes that a lot of new people coming into wholesale make is, let's just blast out a form email that says the same thing. It says, dear fill in the blank, and they actually leave in their fill in the blank in the email because they don't, right? And they're just sending these form emails, and they forget on the receiving end of these emails is not a company, is not a business, is not a sales team. It's a human being. It's a person on the other end. And the sooner and faster you can connect with the person on the other end by finding out what is their biggest problem that they need help solving, then that's what's going to give you the edge over every other wholesale sourcer, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Right.
I see a lot of mistakes like that. That's one of the biggest mistakes that you see people make with wholesale is not understanding what Dan had talked about earlier. Dan's original mindset, right, of just I'm trying to hand them money. Why won't they take it? You have to get out of that. It's all about understanding what is actually going on in the minds of these brand owners. They have a certain amount of Amazon sellers that they work with, and in their minds, it can change depending on who it is. But in their minds, that there are two different kinds of brand owners about Amazon. They either think that their existing sellers are good or doing a good job, and that the sales of their product can't improve, or there are those that believe that they have that adding a new seller can't improve the sales of their product. And 99% of the time, with that thought, that adding a new seller can't improve the sales of their product, they're right. The problem is we are the 1% of sellers that actually know how to improve the sales of their product, know what goes into it now to significantly increase sales, as we've done it now at this point, I would say hundreds of times with brands, being able to sell their product and improve it. And it comes down to being able to convince them of that, being able to have a conversation, be able to create a conversation where you can talk about that. And then with the biggest mistake that sellers are making trying to pick up wholesale accounts is trying to pitch and trying to dictate to these brand owners, and they don't actually care about that. My biggest tip is to create a dialogue, because they'll just tell you all their problems. They'll tell you everything that you need to know to be able to help them. They'll tell you everything that you need to know to be able to get the account. They'll just literally tell it to you if you listen and you ask the right questions. And that's what it comes down to. Too many people are going to them trying to solve problems that they don't even know if the brand has or if they care about, instead of just listening to them.
I agree. So, and I think one of the things we assume is that brands understand Amazon. They don't. They're really good at product development and manufacturing and wholesaling, but they don't understand individual platforms. So when we start having a conversation as, can we sell your stuff? We're not giving ourselves credit that we have the tools they don't even know exist, and we have the knowledge that they don't have of the platform.
Yeah,
so understand that when you don't use verbiage that we understand and we know as Amazon sellers, but brand owners have never heard of.
Absolutely. Some don't have the knowledge. Most don't. Most have just no comprehension or understanding of it. They have no desire, and they have no desire to sell on Amazon. No. They just have absolutely no desire. That's not what their business model is. And it's a huge range of what you can expect from these brand owners. I literally just saw our team and our base camp messaging about one of them, and it reminded me, one of our brands. It's a very successful multi-million-dollar company. I think they do somewhere around $10 million or $16 million a year in annual sales. They have 60 employees. And their owner is in his 80s. And the last few times that we've had conversations with him, we were talking about stuff, and he was just like, guys, you got to slow down. I don't understand any of this, and I don't really care to. Just keep doing what you're doing. You know exactly. What I mean? He just doesn't even he just knows that we do a good job, and he's happy with that.
He sees the results, so it all brings us back down to the numbers. So to just kind of revisit what we're talking about today, which is how to leverage time and money and other people. I'm just going to share my little notes screen. And I think these are the three things that if we leverage properly in our business.
40 minutes in, we'll get on topic.
I know, right? But that's okay. I'll pull you guys back in. It's okay. So I want to hear your stories. And I know you're excited and passionate about this. So I'll just pull you back in and get hyper-focused on. Tell me if I'm missing anything. First, you can start part-time, guys. For those of you who have a full-time job, I get questioned all the time, do I need to quit my job to start on Amazon? No. When you leverage people, money, and software. Am I missing any?
No, I mean, if you leverage those things, what you do is
people, money, software.
Creating time.
Right.
If you're able to effectively, and that was one of the things. It's kind of funny that you talk about this. I was recently reading an article, and it was talking about, to the average person, if they want to become a millionaire, what they have to do. And it's, if you do the math versus, traditional earning, even at say $70,000 or $80,000 a year, $100,000 a year salary, when you start factoring in expenses and the amount of money you can physically make over time, it is literally impossible to save your way to $1 million. It is actually impossible.
Yep.
Your income has to be so high to do that. And it's, how do you do it? And it's by these three things. It's leveraging money, people, and time. And whenever you do that,
software and technology, maybe not software wasn't the right word. Maybe I should say technology.
Exactly. I mean, but I would say that that's interchangeable, right? It's like,
I know, but I'm a perfectionist, so I'm going to change it.
But whenever you're able to leverage those things, what you're doing is you're replicating the amount of work that you're able to do. And I can tell you about kind of our first foray into this and really how it affected our business. So that was the big account that really was like, okay, so wholesale's a thing for us now. And I spent the rest of this was like in probably September or October, and I spent the rest of the year like picking up accounts. And we hired somebody at the very end of December, and it was our first hire. And it was a guy named Matt, and his goal, like our goal with him, was to just be able to teach him how to actually pick up accounts. And bear in mind that Matt it's funny because Matt was probably the most backward person. He's definitely a huge introvert.
It's like 19 too.
He was just super young. And ultimately over the next few months, that was what I really focused on, was just training him. And I would do calls with him, and like we would just go through that process. And effectively what I was doing is, even though, he wasn't actually working at the time, I was creating the ability to start leveraging that, right? I was leveraging my money at that point by hiring somebody to train. And then I was doing, relatively, it was funny because looking back, I don't know how he got as good as he did with the training that I gave him, because it was, really my first foray into that. And I think it was that's why it took so long. Like, it really is because I didn't know what I was doing at the time. And it was more just like, kind of just do the things I do. But ultimately he turned into a really good employee. And that year we went from $1.2 million to $3.6 million in sales.
In 1 year.
In 1 year. And that was the power of, and to me that shows you the scalability of wholesale in general, right? Like also in that period, whenever, we went from 1.2 million to 3.6 million in sales, like my time dropped significantly. I went from working 70-hour weeks to working 30, 40-hour weeks. Like
I'm going to add another one because I want you to talk about this.
Sure.
I know at one point you had a very large, if I could type, good grief, very large warehouse.
Yep.
So for those of you who think you need to prep wholesale shipments that you receive in your driveway, talk to me about what that journey was with your warehouse.
No, I mean, it was ultimately awful. And it was, whenever we first started creating the Amazon business, there were no such thing as a prep center. Like we the first prep center started showing up about the time we got in wholesale, and we weren't active in Facebook groups. Like we weren't talking to people, we were just doing our job, like trying to make money. Like that was really what we were doing. And so I didn't know that there were other options, like even though they were still in their infancy. So we started a warehouse, we bought forklift, like we hired warehouse people and all those things. And ultimately, like we grew a successful business, but it wasn't the business that we wanted. Like you remember the big thing earlier where I was talking about was freedom, right? Like freedom. Whenever you have a warehouse, there's a lot of obligation that goes into it, even if you're not the manager of your warehouse. Like, especially in an 8, 10, 12 person company. Like I remember one time, like just off the wall examples of what happened. There was a truck that went through our parking lot that broke a sewage line. And it took us, like we had to work with the landlord on the warehouse to like resolve whose fault it was. Like, and that was something our employees couldn't handle, but it took days and days.
What did you do?
we ultimately came up with a way to split it.
No, not about the sewage line. I'm sorry. I'm fast forwarding you. What did you do with the warehouse? Where are you at now?
Sure. I was like, I don't know why she
I
wants to know.
love your stories, and I want to make sure that we're delivering the value that we promised to on this webinar about leveraging time and money.
Sure. Well, ultimately what we decided is it wasn't, and there's another problem. It's very, very hard to find good employees. Like, particularly, and as people grow in their business, like it really is. It's much harder to find good people than you think. And over the course of time, like particularly like warehouse employees, the average pay rate in our area is $7 an hour. We were paying our employees $10 to $12 an hour, and we still weren't able to have great employees. Like we had people that were missing all the time. We had, just
stuff happens.
Right.
People are unpredictable. That's just it.
And what we kind of found out is when we started really looking at it is we were spending more time working on our warehouse trying to make it work than we were working on our business trying to make more money. And that was where we decided we had to make a move. And it was really scary. Like it was a really scary move at first. And I remember whenever we were looking at it, like we had to go through each line and we had to determine which lines made sense under the new cost structure and which didn't. Because it cost about, the move from our warehouse to prep was about 3 times the cost, like in per unit process.
So you kind of sliced off the lower performing inventory in order to move everything to a prep company.
Yep. And it was a significant cut. Like, of our revenue, it was, probably 30 or 40% of it was cut off. And that was just where our warehouse made it possible to handle those items more efficiently.
Well, I think I know the answer to this. How did it affect your profitability now?
Within 1 year, we were more profitable than we ever had been, and that was because we were able to truly leverage the partnerships, right? Like we weren't spending number one, we have a great prep center, and we developed a great relationship with them. That was huge in our business too, in our communication and things like that. Like being able to really develop a partnership is different than a friendship. A partnership is give and take, and that there's an understanding, and that's the thing is with our prep center we have great communication. They legitimately want to help us, and they do a better job than our warehouse, like honestly. And what that did is it created the bandwidth. Like instead of being out there like trying to figure out how a mistake happened or something like that, like what our employees, Joel and Kendra, like they were able to be on the phone with vendors, and being on the phone with your vendors and suppliers helps you cultivate the relationships. And when you cultivate the relationships and start adding value, that turns into exclusives. And that's what happened. Is like, we had less accounts and less revenue, but all of our
accounts became more valuable.
Exactly.
Because you had time to have those touch points with them on a human to human touch points instead of just an email. And we could
get more of them. Yeah, we could get more of them and get better ones because we now had time to focus on doing that instead of focusing on figuring out how we were going to get these shipments shipped out with 2 of our warehouse employees. But that we had to fire because they figured out a scheme to be able to steal lunchtime.
That actually happened. That actually happened. I mean, they mapped out a scheme to steal lunchtime one time.
Come on.
It's ridiculous.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk about, because I know a lot of people are on here because of the one thing I said, I'm going to tell you how to get more money.
That's sure. And I actually can do that right now. I can transition us into that perfectly. I've been thinking about it if you want me to.
Yes, please.
So what I want to do here is walk, you can leave that up.
Talk to us. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so I'll walk you through a visualization of what this is like. What building a successful wholesale business is like. We'll walk through the steps, and we'll walk through how to leverage all the things that you saw on the screen there, and knowing now what Dan and I know now. This isn't necessarily the process that Dan and I did it, or the order that Dan and I did it in, because we didn't have any help and we didn't have anyone to tell us how to do this. We learned it all the hard way with making mistakes over years and years. So everything that I'm about to give you and lay out here is how to build a 6-figure profit wholesale business, the steps in the order and the things that you should do in the proper order, so that in the end you have a business that generates an annual profit greater than $100,000 a year, and will be nearly automated or delegated.
I'll be your note taker.
So that it's just, you're just spending a few hours a week on it. Now, here's the caveat to all this. For anyone listening, this will not happen overnight. This will not happen over a year. This will be over years. The joke that I make all the time about our business model is that this is as far from a get-rich-quick scheme as there could be. This is a get-rich-slow scheme. Like, yes, Dan and I have sold $25 million on Amazon. Our business generates multiple millions of dollars in sales every year. It grows every year. Last year was every year is our most profitable year, and it gets better and better. But it's taken time to get here, and it will take you time as well.
Consistency and commitment.
Yeah. So I like the caveat with that is, like, there's tons of people out there trying to teach you, I'll get rich, do this, do that. And that's not how this works. This is actually a real thing, because we live in reality. I'm just talking to you about a real business model. Okay. So this is what you want to do to be able to get to the point that we are at now, that took us, 5 years or so to really get to this point. How you can do it in half the time that we did. So it starts with, starting your business. Our minimum recommendation on capital, that's the money part, right? We think that it's a reason you can reasonably get started with $2,000, that if you set aside that, and that's just to purchase products with $2,000. If you fully leverage $2,000 on wholesale product at a reasonable margin, 15% margin, a 30% ROI, that means fully leveraged. You sell all that product in a month, which is what we do, which is what we try to teach people to do. You sell that product in a month, you'll return $2,600. You'll make a $600 profit. So you'll be at a $600 profit your first month. You fully invest $2,600. You see how this works as you start to snowball your investment. So you have a $600 income, $600 a month income, which turns into like an $800 a month income, which turns into, and that grows and grows until by the end of your first year or your first year and a half, you actually start to have a solid amount of investment capital. But here's the key to that. What's very important about that is reinvesting that money. When you make $2,600, is to completely reinvest the $2,600 back into the business, back into product capital, right? You don't want to be you'll significantly slow down your growth or your ability to grow your business if you're pulling money out of that. So I highly recommend that you not pull out money to take back personally for at least the first year if you can. I understand that there are circumstances that change that, but if you try to make this you do this part-time while you're still working a job, just like when we got started, that's what you should do, is to constantly reinvest money. So that's one tip when it comes to money, right? Okay, so now you're actually getting started in the business, right? At the beginning, you'll do all the work yourself, likely, because the people that come from different situations, people come from different levels of capitalization. Yes, there are people that you may have tens of thousands of dollars that you can dedicate this, so it would sound a little bit different to you if I were giving you recommendations on how you could scale faster. But I'm going to assume that you don't have access to capital like that, so you're going to be rather bootstrapped, starting with closer to a $2,000 investment. In that case, the work in the business, when you get started, it's all going to be done by you. And if it's all going to be done by you, that means you're going to be doing the phone call. You're going to be doing the scouting, which means you're going to be searching for the products on Amazon. You're going to be doing the phone calls or the emails to try to talk to brand owners. And then the most important thing that you're not going to be doing is packing your products or shipping any orders. And that comes in the prep center part. If you are packing and prepping and shipping your own products, you're doing a $7, $8, $9 an hour job. If your goal is to be making $50 an hour or $100 an hour, and that's where you want to value your time in your business, you'll never get there doing a $7, $8, or $9 dollar an hour job. So you want to start by one of the very first things you do in your business is set up with a prep center, which doesn't cost you anything. Most of them don't have upfront fees or anything. They just charge you after you sent product in to them for them to prep. So there's no real direct cost there at all. So you have that set up.
1 second, and I think this is a critical point that most people overlook. Like, particularly when people are starting out in business and they think, I can save the cost by doing this myself, and that's not what it is.
Yes.
And Dylan mentioned it. It's not just doing a $9 an hour job, because what you're doing when you're doing that $9 an hour job is you're negating the $50 an hour job that you should be doing. So it costs you more than double whenever you're actually prepping products. And that was one of the things that kind of took a while for us to understand is, My business can't grow when I'm doing this. And I can't, and we fall into the trap oftentimes of, well, I don't have, maybe I don't have money to spend right now. Like I've already spent my money. It's fine to print my products. And that's not the case, because, realistically, you should be looking for the best opportunity that's going to grow your business the fastest, constantly looking for opportunity.
Yep. And when
so
you
I'm going to add that into that risk mitigation. I had 2 pallets come in end of last April. And I unpacked the pallets, and I'm yanking and throwing things around and doing this, and I ended up flat out 1.5 pallets in on the floor with a torn iliopsoas. I was out of commission. I mean, out for a good month. I was crawling to the bathroom.
How much did that?
Because I touched product.
How much did that cost you?
The time alone. I mean, I was horizontal for weeks. Not able to move, not able to think, not able to work. So think about the risk mitigation. When you're using a prep center, you're not wearing and tearing in your body, and anything can happen. Anything can happen, right? When you're touching product that you don't even think about it until it happens. So that was my personal story of don't touch product anymore.
Yep. So at this point, we've got our $2,000 in capital. We know we're going to be doing reverse sourcing wholesale business model. We're set up with the prep center. So now we only have 2 jobs. There's literally at this point, before you ever get your first wholesale account, you only have 2 jobs that you have to do or focus on every day. And they're very simple. One is to scout for products. We have, the things that we teach in the workshop, how we identify successful products that we taught in lesson 3 of the workshop. You're searching Amazon for products that you can potentially sell that would look like that would make you a decent amount of money. And then you're doing that, and you're contacting those companies. And that's all you have to do. You have 2 jobs, and they're very simple. Search for products, make contact with companies, and that's it before you ever get your first account. When you do land your first wholesale account, well, then suddenly you have 3 jobs. It's search for products, continue contacting companies, and then just manage the sales of that existing product on Amazon. So now you only have 3 jobs, right? So now we know you have 3 jobs. And as you continue you're doing those 3 jobs for a little while, you're adding some accounts, you're leveraging your money. Here are the first ways that you can start to automate, delegate, and scale your business. The first one that you're going to add is software. You add software as you need it. This is a tip that we give very often, because people get too far ahead with software many times, and they're spending money on software that they don't need yet. You add software when it solves a problem that you already have. You're wasting money if you're buying software that doesn't solve a problem that you don't already have. But the first problem that you're going to have in your business is the amount of products that the time it takes to scout products. And that's the easiest thing to leverage with software. Is there are many softwares like Jungle Scout, Tactical Arbitrage, and Keepa that make the product scouting and research so much quicker and easier, I would say, versus doing it yourself without software versus doing it with those software. It literally is 100 to 1. And that's not even an exaggeration. The amount of time that you save once you leverage those softwares properly is you save time 100 to 1. And that's the first way that you'll scale your time. Because remember, that's what the most valuable resource that you have is time. So those softwares will add more time in your business for you to do what? So now you're spending less time on scouting. So remember I said you had 3 jobs. So one of them has been mostly we'll call it halfway outsourced, so that you can spend more time on contacting companies and landing accounts, and then managing the sales of your existing products on Amazon, which involves, just like making sure it's all getting checked in, making sure that you're optimizing the listing properly, making changes, things like that. And most of that is front-loaded work anyway. You kind of do that early on. You do that once, routine, and it's not a whole lot of work really. But anyway, it only becomes a lot of work as you scale and you have more and more products and you're doing more and more sales. Anyway, so that's the first thing, is the software is to automate scouting. Then, as your business has continued to succeed because you've added more time into your business, into your life, that way you'll have more money. Your business is growing. And now it's time to, again, remember, if you really want a big business that's eventually paying you over $100,000 a year, is you have to remember to continue to invest in it. So the next stage is going to be, you're going to have enough money to be able to make a hire, but that hire is going to be a cheap hire. It's going to be a virtual assistant from the Philippines. It's going to be somebody that you're going to be paying usually between $2 and $3 an hour. They speak English. English is an official language in the Philippines, and there's plenty of very talented people that are going to be able to immediately work into your business. And the role of that person that you hire from the Philippines for, let's say, $3 an hour, they're going to have two roles. They're going to have the role of helping to do the scouting for you. You're going to teach them you're going to have processes, very simple processes for how to find products, profitable products, the same way that you were doing it. You were finding them. You teach them that, and then that's what they do every night. The Philippines is like about a 12 or 11-hour time difference from the United States, so they're working at night while you're sleeping. You wake up in the morning and you have all these products that have already been scouted for you, and then all you have to do is start picking up the phone and calling these companies or sending out emails to these companies. So now between software and using a virtual assistant, now you have 100% automated the scouting part of your business for $3 an hour, and for whatever the cost of the softwares are, say about $150 or $200 a year annual cost, or something like that. Maybe it's a little more. That part of your business, a third of your business, is now completely delegated, completely automated, however you want to explain it, right? And this is in a relatively early stage of your business. So now you only have two jobs, focusing on contacting brands and picking up wholesale accounts, and focusing on providing value to your existing listings, managing the sales of your product on Amazon. Well, your next virtual assistant hire is going to be someone who does at least half of the work for managing the Amazon sales, managing your Seller Central account, taking care of a lot of those aspects. So now you only have 1.5 jobs. And the next part of this, and this is how then when you're to the point where you will have totally eliminated yourself from the business, whether this is a year and a half down the line, is now you make a domestic hire. This domestic hire, this person you'll start teaching and training them how to make the calls and do the emails to brands to acquire the accounts. And that domestic hire will do that. It depends on what part of the country you're in. It's possible that this person could even be remote. They don't have to be with, it's absolutely 100% possible for this to be a remote position. There's no reason that they need to be in an office with you or to be in your location. I would say the starting salary for a job like this, it's effectively a sales position, is going to be between $30,000 and $40,000. You're going to be able to make a hire, a pretty reasonable person that you're going to be able to work with. And they'll be able to do that and potentially also handle the day-to-day maintenance of the Amazon business as well. And at that point, you have a functioning business with a proven business model. You've put all these processes in place with software, actual processes for virtual assistants to use, and now you have a domestic hire. And so at this point, you'll have a 6 or 7-figure business that's completely automated and delegated because of leveraging all the things that I just explained. I don't know another type of business. I literally don't. I don't know another type of business that you can do this outside of maybe like creating successful Shopify stores, which has a very broad, different set of skills that are required. I don't know any other business model that you can automate and delegate like this, starting from such a low capital point, and do it in the amount of time that I just explained, in the time frame I just explained. It took us to get to this point where Dan and I were removed from the day-to-day operations of the business. I say it took about 3 years. We people that we've worked with, teaching them all the things not to do and to use that process that we just kind of walked through. I see people do it in a year and a half now. Versus
I've actually seen a couple people do it in less time than that.
Sure, like Trent Deersman did it in 6 months. You know what I mean? Like some people can do that, right? He started with a little bit more money than most people would start with, right? He started from a point of having access to more capital. So if you do, you can obviously that speeds up the whole thing clearly. So what I just walked you through is like that's what it looks like. That's what it looks like from starting today, wherever you're at today, and a year and a half, 2 years from now, you being at the point where you have a business that's generating $100,000 a year in profit for you, and you're spending less than 20 hours a week working in it yourself. We've obviously got to the point where we work, I on the Amazon business, I work like 1 to 2 hours a week. Dan probably like 6 or 7. But yeah, so you can get it down that low.
And for those of you who can't see the slide I just wrote, at the end of all this, you now have an asset that is sellable, and there is a huge market for e-com businesses. There are buyers out there with money just looking for a turnkey. By turnkey, it operates basically on its own operation that they just want to put money and people into. So when you
Yeah.
build this foundation, now you not only have the cash flow, but if you wanted to as an exit strategy, you could sell that as an asset instead of just having a job.
Right. Yep. And that's what's comfortable. That's what's a great part about all this is Dan and I and our business is sellable. If we wanted to list it for sale, we could do that, and it would likely sell in 30 days. One of our TWF students, Emmerich Manello, I think you talked to him recently.
I did. I interviewed him a couple weeks ago. He's a super guy.
Yeah,
Really
he
nice
sold
guy.
he didn't even sell his Amazon business. He just sold a wholesale account. He sold one of his wholesale accounts for over $400,000, and like and then that was one that it was in 2 years. It only took him 2 years to get that wholesale account up to that point. He sold a single wholesale account. That was it.
Even better, English isn't his first language, and when he first came to America not too long ago, he didn't speak a word of English.
Right, exactly.
It's actually, whenever you hear his whole story about that, it's actually crazy. He said for the first month he didn't know what the foods were, and he would just point at stuff, and then they would bring it, and he finally got one that he liked, and it was a hamburger, and then he would just order a hamburger every day for a month, and that was what he would eat.
But he also told me that he has trouble understanding some accents, and he really has to pay attention when you guys talk.
I've been told I have a thick accent.
Very cute. So I want to add a couple of thoughts here real quick. Guys, get a pen. I'm going to give you some ways to generate some funds in order to fund your wholesale business. So every 4 or 5 months or so, I request a credit card balance increase on all of my cards. It does a couple of things. One, it does not ding my credit report because I'm just asking for a balance increase. And two, it gives me, more capital to work with. But three, one of the metrics that credit card companies look at is the amount of used credit card balance that you have. So if you've got $1,000 on a credit card and you've used $999, that's a bad metric. But if you have $2,000 available on a credit card and you've used $999, that's a better metric for your credit score. The other thing is small business loans, small business grants. If you're a woman-owned business or minority-owned business, there are grants out there for folks like us. There are a lot of people out there with more money than time. Partner with someone who's got money they want to invest somewhere, and you've got the time, and build that business together. Get an Amazon loan. How long do you have to be selling on Amazon? Is it a year before they start offering WhatsApp?
About a year, yeah.
About a year, they'll offer you a loan, but I've leveraged Amazon loans, especially during fourth quarter. There are a lot of companies out there that will give you, once you start, if you're already selling on Amazon, there are companies like Accrueme, ACCRUEME. I interviewed the guy about 6 months ago. I'll look for the interview and pop it out in an email to everybody. But they will help you fund your Amazon business, basically. And if you watch that video, it'll give you details. So where do you go from here? Because I want to make sure that I'm respecting everybody's time. There is a wholesale webinar happening this Sunday. Dan and Dylan are going to give, what are you going to teach on this wholesale webinar? It's live. What are you going to teach people this Sunday?
We're going to teach how to land wholesale accounts. We're going to teach specific strategies that we use to actually convince brand owners to make us the seller, an authorized retailer of their products.
I love it. And that is your competitive edge, everybody. So go to wholesalewebinar.com, and that will take you over to their registration page. There is no replay, I repeat, no replay on the wholesale webinar. So sign up and be there with a notepad and bells on and take notes. And I think one of the reasons they do this is because, hey, the people who show that they can commit and take action right away and show up, they're the ones who are going to have the competitive edge over every other, I call them lazy Amazon seller. So show up on Sunday. And then also you're holding a free wholesale workshop. It's 4 lessons. It closes February 13th. All of those lessons go away. But if you go to freewholesaleworkshop.com right now, you can binge watch the first 3 of those lessons. And then the 4th lesson comes out on Monday the 10th. Anything else you guys would like to share?
No, yeah, you got it right. I'm glad that you mentioned it. That's the reason that there's no replay. There's 2 main reasons. The information that we're going to be sharing is stuff that I don't want to replay out in the public. It's going to be that kind of sensitive information. It's going to be really like stuff that you just don't want that many people to be able to have access to. So the only people I do want to have access to it are the ones that care enough to show up live and be there and take the time out of their day to be a part of it. And so that's exactly why there's no replay.
Yep, so get the competitive edge, go to wholesalewebinar.com, sign up for that webinar. I will be on it too, because I always learn new things. You know, there's any opportunity we have to learn just one little tidbit of information. We never know everything, right? And Amazon's always changing and e-commerce is always growing. So that one little piece of information could leverage you into a whole nother realm with your Amazon and e-commerce business. So thank you, Dylan and Dan, for being on here. So let me turn this off here, stop the share, so I can do a face-to-face with you guys. Thank you for being on. Any parting words, any words of wisdom you'd like to share with my tribe?
I mean, absolutely. I would tell them that you seriously, if you want to have a business or you want to grow your business, take the time to join that free workshop. Like, honestly, we go over, we go over a ton of information, really in depth. And it's one of those things where, you know, maybe you're not even interested in wholesale and you're like, you're looking at this and you're saying, you know, it's not for me. It'll make you a better Amazon seller. Like, if you want to be better at what you do, be there. And that's how it really starts, right? It's being able to do that much more than the other person. You know, why were we successful initially? Is because we were willing to work 70 hours a week until we figured out what we were doing. Like,
now we work 5 or less.
Yeah, let's short circuit that for these guys. Definitely not doing 70-hour weeks again.
No, but I mean, that's it. If you want change in your life, you have to be willing to do the things that get change. And this one has a real low barrier of entry, right? It's free. The only thing it literally costs is your time. So that would be it. I know that this workshop over delivers. Like, that's the things. We put enough stuff in here. We, like, even when you join the workshop, join the Facebook group. Like, we've literally answered hundreds, if not thousands, of questions in there.
What lesson do you have the link to the Facebook group on? Is it lesson 1?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, so if you guys go to freewholesaleworkshop.com, that'll take you to where all the lessons are kind of listed at the top. Binge watch those lessons, and you can actually download some. I know today's lesson had what was it that had the link to the free webinar, and then what was the other link?
So it had the guide that has basically it breaks down our scouting system, our wholesale formula. So you get the whole formula in a document, yeah.
And in lesson 1, you had a supplier list, I think, right? Or a leads list. You had a leads list today.
We posted that today as well too. Yeah, to show you examples of products where we already ran our math on to just show you examples of this is what wholesale products look like. It's a bunch of products you've never heard of, and that's exactly right. There's hundreds of thousands of products on Amazon that can earn you thousands of dollars a month that you've never heard of.
Nope.
And that's what's
exciting.
Sexy
products.
Whenever we did have our warehouse, one of the most fun things whenever we would hire a new employee would be them looking at our product selection. And they're like, we never had a single employee that had heard of a single product that we carry.
Yeah.
Like, it's, you know, Dylan's not joking. I mean, there's hundreds of millions of products on Amazon, like vast majority of which you've never heard of, but they make thousands of dollars per month. And that, you know, in a lot of cases, they need somebody who actually cares about their brand.
Right, I'm dropping the links in the chat, guys. Go to freewholesaleworkshop.com. You can binge watch the first 3 lessons and download and take advantage of all of the free resources that are included with the lessons. Join the Facebook group. There you'll find the link also in the lessons. And then go to wholesalewebinar.com and sign up for Sunday. I will see you on there. Well, you won't see me because it's Dan and Dylan, but I'll be on there kind of lurking in the chat too. So thank you, Dan Metters, Dylan Frost. I appreciate you guys more than you'll ever know. I'm getting all gushy here. So thank you so much for being on tonight. And I'll see you on Sunday.
Hey, thanks for having us on, Barbara. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
We'll see you.